"Don't you reckon your mom was playing a prank on us?" Regina inquired of her husband, her body trembling beneath the persistent drizzle. "The train rolled in 20 minutes ago. Even my mother wouldn't pull a stunt like that," Henry responded, locking eyes with his wife, then added uncertainly, "but maybe not to such an extreme carrot top." Last night, the Tokarev received a note from Henry's mother. "I'll be arriving tomorrow morning. The train is at such and such time." Harper wasn't one for superfluous chatter. This terse information instantly cast a shadow over Regina's spirits. "Why is she coming?" Henry asked, a hint of concern creeping into his voice. "What's going on?" The car number didn't even correlate with the train number. With a long sigh, Henry struggled to connect with his mother, but to no avail. Regina watched him with a wistful smile, her heart heavy. "Forget it, Henry. You know she can't stand being in the whole carriage." "That's what she says. Plus, she knows you'll try to call back immediately." "Do you really want to explain it to your son in front of your compartment mates?" "Not a great plan." It was raining heavily in the morning, and as you'd expect, nobody bothered to bring an umbrella in a hurry. The train had arrived a while ago. For about 10 minutes, the Tokarez dashed from one car to another, searching for a familiar face in the noisy, diverse crowd. Gradually, the crowd thinned out on the platform, and the last porter rolled past a cart loaded with vibrant suitcases. Meanwhile, the soaked spouses continued stomping under the station clock, gazing intently into the unknown distance. Regina couldn't help but gaze longingly at the wildflower bouquet, now transformed into a sad, drooping bush. "Hey, Carrot Top, I think that's her." Henry perked up, pointing to a lady with a sizable bag and a suitcase on wheels emerging from a distant carriage. Ah, naturally the dignitary herself, Harper. Royalty surely shouldn't jostle amidst a boisterous throng. Henry darted toward his mother, lavished her with kisses, and relieved her of her bags. With each stride closer to his mother-in-law, Regina increasingly wished she could just vanish. On the surface, an elegant figure, at the age of 50, tall, slender, and impeccably clad. Yet, an unmistakable haughtiness emanated from her austere visage. Her piercing stare and the taut line of her lips commanded authority. Even the sharp tap of her heels on the station platform seemed to echo with a military precision. Clearly a headmistress through and through. "Greetings, Harper," radiating as ever. Regina offered a warm smile, attempting to pass a bouquet to her husband. "Good morning, Regina," the mother-in-law responded coolly, barely acknowledging the gesture as she continued to converse with her son. "As it stands, I've been off work for nearly 2 months, so expect me to be around for quite a spell." "That's splendid. It's been ages since your last visit. Mom, this is for you." Henry, somewhat delayed, presented the wilted flowers. "Oh, how lovely." Harper expressed genuine delight. "It's heartwarming that you recall my preferences. Wildflowers have been my favorite since my younger days." Actually, it was Regina who picked them out. "She's the one who remembers all," Henry chimed in, full of pride. "Indeed, that's what I presumed," remarked the mother-in-law casually, economical yet bold. Harper was at her usual antics. Right after getting into the car, she whipped out a shiny magazine from her purse. Henry, with a hint of caution in his voice, queried, "How was the trip, Mom? Get any good rest?" "Eyes on the road," she ordered sharply, burying herself in the pages of the magazine. Without a word, Regina swiveled towards the window, lost in her own thoughts. From the very first day they met, the relationship between Regina and her mother-in-law was a complete disaster. It all began 7 years ago when Henry introduced his New Year bride to his mother in Volgograd. As Harper examined the shy and delicate girl, her eyes fixated on Regina's stunning mane of dark and fiery red hair. Regina, doesn't that mean queen in Latin? What a magnificent name, simply captivating, mused Harper, her voice filled with admiration. Regina quickly chimed in, eager to contribute to the conversation. "Yes, that's what my mother used to call me." With a sigh, the future mother-in-law replied, "Indeed, the love of a parent can blind us. And yet, I named my son Henry. Oh, what a mess I got myself into. Henry the lazy slob." Harper tenderly gave her son a comforting pat on the back of his head, and completely disregarding the presence of their guest, sternly inquired, "And what about Evelyn?" "She's waiting for you." "Mum, you're at it again." Henry nonchalantly dismissed. "You've become fixated on the notion of marrying off the kids with Layla, without even bothering to seek the opinions of myself and Evelyn." Well, let's see how you'll be peering guiltily into Evelyn and Layla's eyes in just an hour," she retorted. They were invited to dinner. Her son protested incredulously. "Naturally, you guessed it right. Who do you think prepared all those delightful dishes or I toiled away at school from dawn till dusk? Layla and Evelyn. How could I possibly overlook them? Henry, known for his stoic demeanor, remained unfazed, prompting Regina to dart her apologetic gaze about the room. Sensing the visitor's evident unease, Evelyn seized the opportunity and gently whispered to her in the kitchen, "Don't be too downhearted. Harper puts up a fight. I'm engaged. We submitted our marriage application just a fortnight ago." "Why the name Harper?" Regina chuckled. "The kids at school gave her that nickname," Evelyn explained with a grin. When Ethan entered this world, Harper made a trip all the way from Volgograd to visit the newborn in the capital on the very first weekend. Gazing lovingly at the little one nestled in the crib, she couldn't help but express a slight tinge of regret. "Our blood runs strong, just like little Henry used to be. He was such a darling back then." Regina's mother, unable to resist, chimed in, "And his eyes are as blue as my daughter's." This remark earned a disgruntled response from her mother-in-law. "All babies have blue eyes. They'll get darker soon enough. Thank God he didn't inherit any red hair." Harper had an immense adoration for her grandson. For 2 summers in a row, she took him along to Volgograd for a delightful couple of weeks, carefully arranging for fruit-filled buckets to be passed between them through a familiar conductor. However, her daughter-in-law's mother still struggled to fully accept her as part of the family. The poor woman could only find solace in the physical distance separating the 2 cities. Ethan, a sprightly 5-year-old, was probably the only family member who was truly thrilled about his grandmother's visit. He eagerly examined his toys and proudly showed off his fancy sneakers to his parents. Regina, moving from one spot to another, accidentally stepped on cherry pits scattered on the floor by her gleeful son. As usual, Harper stuck to her old ways during this visit. Within just a few days, Regina began feeling utterly inadequate. According to her mother-in-law's subtle critique, she was bad at tidying up the apartment, dressed without any flair, didn't bring up her son correctly, and only cooked average meals. Harper delivered her comments so deftly that any attempt at defending herself would come off as impolite and foolish. Frequently, the other mother would demonstrate through her own actions that Regina's tasks could be handled much more efficiently. During the week, when she found herself with some solitude, Harper kept herself busy. Regina wasn't exactly neglectful, yet her apartment had never sparkled quite like this. Those linens? They were so brilliantly white. It was as if her mother-in-law had placed them in a fantastical washing machine that worked wonders. "Harper, I can't thank you enough for your assistance. The editorial office is pure chaos at the moment, and I've barely a moment to breathe." Regina expressed her deep gratitude, only to be met with a playful swat on the nose. "Anytime. I simply can't stand by while my grandson chokes under mountains of dust." With a saintly patience, the daughter-in-law held her peace against the constant teasing. Yet, one fateful day, Regina finally lost her cool. During dinner, Harper meticulously poked at Regina's prized specialty cake with a spoon. After sampling a teensy bite, she remarked, "Well, the sponge isn't exactly light and the cream is somewhat greasy, but all in all, it's passable." That evening, Regina threw a silent fit in the bedroom, her frustration simmering just below the surface. Eventually, unable to bear it any longer, she made her way back to the kitchen, where her mother-in-law was engrossed in a game of solitaire. "Harper, if you're not fond of how I'm feeding your son and grandson, perhaps you would prefer to do the cooking yourself," she snapped. "Are you suggesting I handle all the household chores?" her mother-in-law replied coolly. "Well, why not? I can take care of the laundry and cleaning, while you handle the meals. Let's just swap duties," the daughter-in-law pressed on, not ready to back down. "Sounds good to me," Harper consented without a flicker of hesitation. Later, as they lay in bed, her husband let out a deep, troubled sigh. "You really didn't have to go through all this trouble, Red. Now Ethan and I are going to end up starving. Mom spent the entire day at school, never picking up any cooking skills. Layla always handled that part for us. She raised Evelyn on her own, with not much cash to spare, so Mom paid her to handle our meals. It worked out for everyone. You really overstepped. Red, you shouldn't have." "It'll be fine. You'll just have to hang in there for a few days," Regina said, attempting to mask the excitement in her tone. At last, her mother-in-law had walked straight into her own snare. It wasn't exactly gracious to feel smug, but hey, everyone deserves a little moment of joy now and then. The following day, upon Regina's return from work, the enticing aromas wafted through the hallway from the kitchen. Her loved ones were already gathered at the dinner table, which was beautifully arranged. Regina's mother-in-law, donning a comical apron, was bustling about. Regina, we've been awaiting your arrival. Cleanse your hands and join us at the table. I must apologize for the simplicity of the meal. After all, I am no culinary expert, uttered Harper, playfully gesturing with her hands. Juicy and bronzed chops, potatoes prepared in a unique manner, and a seemingly ordinary salad adorned with a sublime and tangy dressing. Everything appeared so delectable that Regina couldn't help but feel a tinge of envy. She cast a reproachful glance at her husband, who simply shrugged with a bemused expression. "Mama, this meal is incredible. When do you become such a master in the kitchen?" Henry inquired. "Well, you see, Henry," his mother replied, a wistful smile gracing her lips. "When you're on your own, you've got to pick up a hobby to stave off that all-consuming boredom. My son has always been a big fan of Regina's cheesecakes, but honestly, they pale in comparison to Harper's masterpieces. Those golden, fluffy rounds filled with raisins and candied fruits, smothered in vanilla sauce. Even Regina herself couldn't help but drool. Grandma, look, they're like tiny suns," Ethan exclaimed with glee. "Could you whip some up for me right now?" "Yay." The mother-in-law cast a sly smile at her daughter-in-law. "Game, set, match. All right, I'll get on it. But there's one catch. No breakfasts while I'm snoozing. I want to catch some Z's during my time off." Naturally, the advantage of having a mother-in-law residing in their abode was tangible. Regina no longer had to shuffle around the stove and hastily ferry a half-awake Ethan to kindergarten. Previously, her son had encountered difficulties in reading. Although he could recite all the letters from memory, he would become bewildered when attempting to string them together into words. Harper swiftly taught her grandson how to read. Regina is still unaware of the enchanting words her grandmother whispered into the boy's ear. But suddenly Ethan began tidying up his toys diligently with an air of importance, and neatly folding his clothes on a small chair. Mischievous cat Bantic promptly ceased scratching the wallpaper with his claws overnight, and would no longer saunter past the toilet. Then it was Henry's turn. One evening, after finishing their meal, her husband stretched contentedly as he rose from the table. "Thank you, Mammy, for the scrumptious dinner," he exclaimed. "Are you heading straight to your couch?" innocently inquired the mother-in-law, savoring her cup of tea. "Don't you want to spare a little time for your son, or lend a hand with the dishes instead of Regina?" "Not today," Henry sighed wearily. "I'm exhaustingly exhausted. You see, I'm actually toiling away, Mom." "Is that so?" Harper disclosed a troubling truth, her voice heavy with implication. "Believe it or not, you're hardly the sole breadwinner under the sun. Plenty manage to juggle work with tending to their offspring and pitching in at home. Back when I was in school, from dawn till dusk, every fleeting moment I found I devoted to you. Not a minute was squandered." Her finger waved accusingly before her bewildered son's face. "And yet, here you are. It's been a fortnight since I moved in, and not once have I seen you wash your own dish, dispose of the rubbish, run the vacuum over the carpet, or engage with your child without being nagged to do so." "Mom, please, take it easy," Henry retorted, visibly nettled. "Red isn't keen on me meddling with the chores." "Is that so?" The mother-in-law arched an eyebrow, skepticism written all over her face. "Poor Carrot. Carrot has sadly morphed into a Cinderella right before your oblivious eyes. If aiding her is too much, could you at least refrain from adding to the chaos, much like that dreadful Bantic of yours? Is scattering your soiled socks everywhere in the house truly necessary? You know, my father, your grandfather, never once allowed his spouse to launder his socks. He found it undignified, you understand." Henry remained uncomfortably mute before bursting into laughter. "Listen up, all my beloved ladies. Starting tomorrow, you'll not find a single one of my socks lying around. Oh, and I'll take out the trash." As soon as the women found themselves alone in the kitchen, Harper let out a wistful exhale. "When we're young, we stumble so much. I constantly feared that Henry would remain under his mother's wing forever. I aimed for him to stand as a true gentleman. Perhaps I pushed too hard. He ended up being a complete clod, utterly dismissive of the efforts women put into their work." "You're such a feminist," Regina grinned. "Nah, I'm just a realist. Henry is an amazing guy. He's got a ton of great qualities. I'm head over heels in love with him. But I gotta admit, he's no prize," Harper pondered. "And let's not forget, you're far from being a perfect wife yourself. It's always the same old story." Regina was always open to connecting on a normal level, even becoming friends, but every time, Harper built this invisible, impenetrable barrier between them. That morning, Regina discovered that she had accidentally left her car keys behind in the parking lot. Realizing this, she promptly called the editorial office to inform them of her delay. The editor-in-chief, displaying kindness and understanding, responded, "Well, no need to rush today at all. It would be preferable for you to complete your article at your own pace and submit it to me tomorrow." Regina, filled with gratitude, exclaimed, "Thank you," with great enthusiasm. She eagerly declared, "I will start working on it immediately." She tiptoed into the apartment, careful not to disturb her mother-in-law's slumber. But suddenly her ears caught the sound of voices resonating from the living room, causing her to freeze in astonishment. As Regina listened more closely, she realized that Harper was engaged in a Skype conversation with a friend. Though tempted to announce her presence immediately, Regina's delight intensified when she overheard the enchanting words, "I'll probably go home in 2 days." With a heart overflowing with joy, she chose to remain concealed in the hallway. "No, Layla, staying here is simply not an option. You can't fathom the exorbitant amount of money I've squandered on these lunches and dinners throughout the week," lamented Harper. "Well, you should let your children know that you can't single-handedly support the entire family," suggested her friend. "But Layla, how can I possibly confess such a thing? Henry and Regina filled the refrigerator to the brim on Monday. Why would I waste money when we have such an abundance of groceries?" Harper questioned. "Why did you initiate this pointless argument in the first place, my dear? You could have lived harmoniously without any conflicts. But no, you just had to show off your strength, didn't you?" Layla reasoned. "Should I have admitted to Carrot Top that I can't cook at my age? He won't wait." I suddenly remembered a nearby restaurant that served delicious, home-style meals, and I felt relieved. "But now I'm clueless about how to escape this predicament," lamented the mother-in-law, her voice filled with distress. "The weekend is approaching. I can't order food from the restaurant in front of the children. No, I'll retreat home in shame." Thankfully, our forgetful dragonfly never thought to check the freezer all week. The food remains untouched. Dragonfly hopscotch. Regina's cheeks flushed with anger. She marched into the living room with determination. "And you're teaching your grandson that lying is wrong, Harper. What about yourself?" A grown woman. Regina observed the mother-in-law's pale face with satisfaction as she jumped up from her chair in a huff. "You were eavesdropping," the mother-in-law exclaimed. "Yes," Regina triumphantly yelled, "I was eavesdropping. And now the foolish dragonfly is finally going to inspect the freezer." The daughter-in-law dashed into the kitchen with Harper close on her heels. Regina flung open the refrigerator door. "Look, everything is still here, untouched. What was the point of this ridiculous charade? We'll give you your money back." "No worries." Regina's voice quivered as she fought back tears. "Was it your intention to just degrade me? For heaven's sake, why? What on earth have I ever done to you? Why the animosity right from the start? I've never demeaned you, never snapped at you, never tried to turn Henry or Ethan against you. Why?" "Because you ruin everything in your path," her mother-in-law suddenly exclaimed. "You snatch away what is most valuable, most cherished. Just like that, without needing it, just like that." Regina, astonished, asked, "Who do you mean by you? Who are you referring to?" Her mother-in-law responded, "Profit-driven redheads like you. One of them stole my husband, Henry's father. Another one took away my son. When I first laid eyes on you, I nearly lost my breath. You even have the same fiery red hair. I wondered if you were that wretched woman's daughter. Thank goodness you're not." Regina couldn't believe her ears, questioning in disbelief. "Are you serious? Have you spent the past 7 years seeking vengeance against me for something that occurred a century ago?" Her mother-in-law shrieked. "He was the only man I ever loved." Regina, overwhelmed with pain and resentment, lashed out. "And what does that have to do with me? What relevance does it hold for me?" Harper spun on her heel and strode purposefully to her room. The daughter-in-law trailed closely behind her. For a few moments, panting slightly, she observed her mother-in-law hastily tossing garments and makeup into her suitcase before she decided to jump in with fresh determination. "Mom, where are you off to? You're really leaving? Without even saying farewell to your son and grandson? You're not going to share those whimsical tales about the charming fairy tale girl? Seriously, where do you think you're going, Mom?" Regina fire-hosed her words out, her voice a rapid-fire barrage. Deep down, she felt a tinge of embarrassment listening to herself, yet she couldn't bring herself to pause. "This romantic saga of yours has become old and dusty. After all, you've got a grandson now, and you still can't shake it off. For 7 long years, you ridiculed me for such trivialities, and now here you are, bolting away." "He was the only man I adored," whispered Harper, her tears flowing freely. Regina's spirit wavered instantly. "Why are you weeping? You constructed this barrier yourself, Harper." Her daughter-in-law's heart clenched with empathy. realizing for the first time that beneath her mother-in-law's tough exterior lay a woman longing for love and security. Let's converse calmly. Where are you off to? It will upset little Ethan and Henry too. I've always harbored a fondness for you as well, deep down. I genuinely wanted to befriend and love you, but I simply cannot allow myself to grow close. Silently, Harper closed her suitcase and took a step toward the exit. Regina intercepted her, seizing the suitcase. Harper, I apologize. Let's have a civilized conversation just once. Release me, Regina, the mother-in-law insisted, reclaiming her suitcase. Hand over that junk. My daughter-in-law grabbed the suitcase once more, flung it to the floor, and gave it a mighty kick. The hefty bag skidded off like a feather and smacked into the nightstand. A beautiful figurine splintered into bits. Both women, puffing and panting, gazed at the wreckage. Then Harper quipped, "Score!" And suddenly both women burst into laughter. Wholeheartedly, they shed the burden of their shared grievances. They found solace on the bed for an extended period, indulging in laughter, tears, apologies, embraces, and seeking forgiveness. An hour later, Harper gently dabbed her tear-streaked eyes with a delicate handkerchief. Ethan asked me to whip up some delectable cheesecakes today, but how will I manage it now? I haven't the faintest clue, lamented Harper. Regina, however, reassured her with a cheerful smile. No worries, we've got ample time until tonight. I'll gladly show you the ropes. The only item missing is candy fruit, which I'll just need to buy.